Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. It's time for your spotlights on Now. Kimberly has it, and this morning we're chatting about how our economy looks from the business chamber's perspective.
Now, at the spotlight on the economy held last week Friday by the Finance Ministry at the Hyatt Regency Hotel, Minister of Finance Colm Imbert said TT's economy was now enjoying a strong recovery following the global fallout caused by the pandemic. But we wanted to check in with the chambers to see if they share the same opinion. And so joining me are the president of the Sawa Business Chamber, Mr. Jason Roach, and also the president of the Greater Tunapuna Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ramon Gregorio. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning. Great morning. Pleasure is mine.
Of course. Now, Mr. Roach, I'll start with you first. I wanted to get first just a brief overview about what you thought about the minister's announcement that the economy is in a fairly good recovery stage following the pandemic.
Well, basically, from what the minister reported on the spotlight of the economy, it shows that we have to count our blessings coming out of a pandemic, right? I think, from the data he has shown, there's some stability returning to the economy, and I think one of the things that has contributed to that is the fact that we have had consistent policies for a number of years, and that is one of the challenges operating in a democracy where you change parties from every 5 years. We've had a tradition of voting governments out, but I figure that with a consistency with policy over a number of years and the strategies that they've employed, it showed that we have seen some gains or uptake in terms of reducing our budgetary deficit as well as our debt ratio. So I think it was the news was very insightful, and I'm very happy to see that we are turning things around. It could be faster, but I think we have to find solutions on how do we accelerate to get some growth.
Of course. And Mr. Gregorio, can you also weigh in on this as well?
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly, and good morning to your viewers. Yeah, I echo Jason's sentiments. It really is good listening, good reading to hear some of the findings from the spotlight on the economy. In particular, what was of interest to me would have been the contribution of the non-oil sector in terms of the increased revenues and that contribution to the overall revenue. I think that is a very promising sign, simply because we are coming out of a pandemic, and the non-oil sector has a big role to play in the development of the country and in us moving forward. We just came out of Agro-Processing Expo. We came out of the TIC conference, and we have a wealth of opportunities in the non-oil sector to explore. And our hope as a chamber is that the government will continue to invest and demonstrate strong interest in the non-oil sector and promoting and really making a step towards diversifying our economy.
Because I was also about to ask you if now should be the conversation to have that, if now should be the time rather to have that conversation about diversifying the economy, since we've been seeing gains in the non-energy sector.
Oh, most certainly. If you look at Jamaica, for example, you see their fintech environment is prospering and thriving, and it really is down to the political will of the day. So most certainly, non-oil sector is the way to go. Having said that, we have had tremendous gains in the oil and gas sector with some pretty high prices, 120 with WTI. We have $9 with gas. So what I would say is that yes, we have a lot of fruits and we have a lot of revenue coming in at this point in time. How we use that revenue to develop other sectors is going to be the critical tipping point for the government. So we wait with bated breath also for the budget to see how some of that spin-off revenue is used.
Of course. Now, Mr. Roach, I want to bring you in here because I know that you were very vocal about inflation and how that's going to affect exactly what we've been seeing now. So our inflation rate stands just below 5%. I mean, do you think this is going to affect us as we move into a new fiscal year?
Well, certainly, the trends internationally with the war in Ukraine, have been forcing, corn and wheat up. And I believe that, right now with the record highs in the gas prices and the oil prices right now, it will only lend to increasing the price of freight, right? So I don't foresee inflation becoming going on the back burner anytime soon. But we have some very critical things that could affect inflation that was spoken about in this spotlight of the economy, and one of them was the fuel and gas subsidy. That where the government is seeking to articulate putting a cap on the actual subsidy, because right now, as it is, where the prices are, he has indicated that we are in the deficit of $2 billion, and that has to be covered. And they're thinking about putting a cap for 1 billion. So even though we have removed basically the subsidy for gas and fuel in this country, one simple change, I believe, will have a very, very serious impact on consumers, and we have to articulate this very carefully. So I want to hear more details on that. But in general, I don't see inflation becoming an issue based on the policies that they have in place. But we have to be very careful because the market is very volatile internationally.
Right. And so, with the adjustment of the fuel subsidy, and of course, what we're looking forward to in the budget, do you anticipate any sort of change in the fuel prices at the pump at this time?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how exactly how he's going to treat Ataka, right? Saying it is one thing, but actually implementing it effectively, which I sure they will come up with a effective plan. But I'm not certain of how it will be effected as yet.
Right. And I want to bring you back in here, Mr. Gregorio, because I know that you also have an eye on the economy in terms of the wage negotiations that's actually taking place now. I know that they would have offered the public servants 4%, and most of them have rejected the offer. Is this a good plan to reject the offer, given the state of the economy and the announcement by the minister that we are in a good state?
Well, it's a bit of a ticklish topic. What I would say, and what I must celebrate the minister for, is recognizing the healthcare workers on the spotlight in the economy. The healthcare workers are due $200 million as a payment, an incentive for their services during the pandemic, and we must in fact celebrate the healthcare workers. As it relates to the 4%, it's a really ticklish position to be in, simply because some persons, based on negotiations, haven't received increases from since 2013, 2014, and being put in that position, I think it really speaks to the economics of the day and what the government could afford. Minister Imbird also pointed out, and as Kimberly you mentioned in your interlude, that if we were to go higher than the 4%, there would be a challenge in terms of managing payments and, of course, going into deeper and deeper arrears. I think a figure that I was bandied about was almost 30 billion in arrears if it was extended to the wider public sector and not just the main bodies. So I think it's something that it's before the CPO right now. The conversation has to continue. My only hope as a chamber is that good sense will prevail, because we do understand the challenges of our economy now coming out of a pandemic. And my hope is that we reach to some middle ground that, of course, recognizes the work of the public sector workers, but at the same time is able to allow the government to use any extra funding and financing that would have gained from the oil and gas surplus that could help other social sector areas, which is where Minister Imbird also indicated that is where the government wants to go. So at this point in time, I'd say I just hope good sense will prevail and that we can meet somewhere in the middle where everybody gets some piece of the pie and is able to enjoy a certain standard of living.
Of course.
I'd like to add there.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Sure, Mr. Roach, yes.
I really think the fact that we settled on 4%, which equates to like 2.6 billion, is really cause for concern, because any citizen in this country would know that you can't be comforted by the level of efficiency and service that you get from the public service. And year in, year out, we're negotiating all these increases, but there's one underlying fact: the government wage bill is increasing faster than the economy is actually growing. and we have to really, take a patriotic stance to ask ourselves logically, is that sustainable? And to hear what the negotiation started at 19%, and it was actually articulated in that spotlight that may have cost the country upwards of $20 billion, right? And when you start talking about those figures, you're talking about just to suffice an increase in the wage bill, is equating to 5%. And if it is, we really accepted the terms of the initial offer, right? Then you're talking about upwards of 15% of the national budget, and we have to look at sustainability from that standpoint. And I would really like to hear, um, how are we going to articulate getting improvement in the public service system to get efficiencies so that the citizenry and the business community can benefit, right? We're talking about, the minister also said, in terms of getting confidence into the economy. Part of the confidence in the economy is the tone of the trade unions, and we expect an upgrade in Moody's, as the finance minister said, but we have to back that up in terms of having a efficient and transparent atmosphere that isn't turbulent, that will be attractive to investors. So that is something that we have to pay attention to.
Of course. And so I like that you mentioned that as well, Mr. Roach, because I wanted to hear the areas of focus that you think the government should focus on for this upcoming fiscal year. I mean, we already would have explained rather that the expenditure is high on social grants. There's also the issue of the WASA transformation that's also taking place. So how is all this going to factor in with some of the areas of focus that they may be looking at for the new fiscal year?
Well, I certainly don't envy the government, because those very set grants that you spoke about just now, there's some very heavy grants, right? We're talking about the social grants in this country, WASA. We're talking about $700 million for TN Tech that can't pay its bills, right? And I really envy the government, because they're very hard decisions that have to be made, because one thing is for certain: we don't have an abundance of money to do every single thing. And what is the key is, how do we prioritize? What is the greater need, right? I certainly don't see them interfering with most of those grants. I think the grant of 2 billion for us is a little exorbitant. I would like to see something done there. I really don't know how he's going to tackle the cap on that fuel subsidy, right? But these grants, it represents a significant expense portfolio within the budget itself, and it's something that they have to put focus on. I would really like to see the line items, and that is what we have to wait on the budget for. So right
Yeah.
now we're still in speculation mood, right?
Yes. Yeah, to see exactly what's going on. Mr. Gregorio,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring you in here as well. Areas of focus?
Crime. um, in my chamber, our members have been affected by crime. Just last week, Tunapuna have been the spotlight for crime, and some pretty heinous crimes at that have hampered our way of doing business, that have hampered our consumers in terms of being able to comfortably and safely navigate Tunapuna and its business environment. So I certainly would want to see more on crime, which was not mentioned on the spotlight on Friday in great detail. But as Mr. Roach has indicated, really it's speculation at this point. But of course, we'd like allocation for crime and serious crime, invited innovation, having line items in there for using technology to solve some of the crimes. And of course, having more consultations between community and the police to be able to effectively eradicate or minimize it to a point where persons feel safe in our various jurisdictions, be it Samoa, be it Tunapuna, be it the country, the nation at large. One of the things that the minister mentioned on Friday that was quite heartening is the continued increase in subventions, and the biggest subvention potentially going to education. We have seen at the recent SAA exam where a number of pupils, over 30%, over 50% scoring below a particular mark, and that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge in terms of turnaround and kids coming out of the pandemic. Today's the first day of school. And we definitely would want allocations to see improved allocations for education to support that thrust to improving the quality of life and quality of education of our students. They are back in a new environment. They are back in that face-to-face environment in full mode from today. So we really want that to be a continual focus, and we are pleased that the government has seen that fit to continue in that particular vein. But crime remains the number one hot topic issue that we need to get a handle on, and we'll be interested in seeing what are some of the allocations and response in the upcoming budget.
Of course.
In the San Juan Chamber, just to add there, in the San Juan Chamber specifically, we have two, to prepare for this season, we really try to facilitate the views of our membership, right? And there are two burning issues that is of great need to them, and this is one. One is VAT returns. I would really like to know in the budget, what facilitation or improved facilitation in the budget has to happen to really lend to improving this VAT return situation. A lot of the SMEs are really hurting, in terms of not getting that cash flow injection back into their business to really function properly. That is something that needs to be articulated. We've been seeing VAT returns almost every year. It's almost like beating it with a hot press, right? But really and truly, I'd really like to see a concerted effort to get that rectified. The other issue for us as a membership really, is the availability of forex, right? And I'm not certain how that is actually being managed right now nationally, but there's a saying that when it is you small, it's hard for you to really have influence to get the resources you need to operate in business. And there are larger businesses that we are sure that don't have that problem. Maybe they're exporting and earning foreign currency on their own. I would really like to see some sort of favor for SMEs to get the foreign currency that they need to operate and grow their business, because they may be small now, but they have the potential to export. And we have a lot of things going on in the Caribbean right now. Guyana is booming, Suriname is booming, and we have to position our SMEs not only to survive in Trinidad but to also explore opportunities in close by jurisdictions.
In the regions as well. I appreciate
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Roach, let me...
Kimberly, just one final
quickly, Mr. Gregorio, go ahead, quickly.
Sure. I fully concur with Jason, simply because the non-oil sector is where the action is.
Right.
And if we could continue to support our SMEs, give our SMEs that voice through grants, through research and funding, and the ability for them to thrive. And as Jason mentioned, a small business today is a big business tomorrow. Let us support our small and medium-sized businesses to really realize their full potential.
Of course. Well, gentlemen, let me thank you so much for coming on the Now Morning Show. I know after the budget is read on the 26th, we may have you back again just to hear your thoughts, of course, on what the minister would have announced. So thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure.
Have a good one. And that was President of the Sour Business Association, Mr. Jason Roach, and also the President of the Greater Tunapuna Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ramon Gregorio, just sharing their thoughts on the spotlight on the economy that was announced by the Minister of Finance last week, Friday. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.
People, man.